Good afternoon. This is Wolfgang Kshatriya. What you are about to hear now is a story that I wanted to share with the public for a long time. But now, since we are in this global crisis, I realize it is very appropriate that I indeed share my personal experience, which is a testimony for the way a crisis can not only affect us, but how also fundamental, substantial, life-threatening crisis can be used by the divine intelligence that is operating within ourselves and outside of ourselves as the global cosmic willpower, for lack of a better term. So how this crisis can be used to teach us a human lesson and to bring us ananda, bliss, as the outcome. So I take you back to the year 2001. I am leaving Paris. I was working at the time with PH1, which was a very renowned, world-class model agency. And I was told by my model agency, Wolfgang, I know we owe you money. We will wire the money once you are in India, in your towards the ashram of Sri Satya Sai Baba, who, as some of you know, is my spiritual mentor, guide, most intimate friend for more than 30 years now. So it was a very relaxed mind and full of enthusiasm. I traveled to Puttaparthi, which is about 200 miles away from Bangalore, South India, in Andhra Pradesh. And I am enjoying the physical proximity of this very Sri Satya Sai Baba, and for the most part, besides taking part in the bhajans and darshans in the prayer hall, I am finding myself in my room writing on a film script. And as days went by, I'm realizing the money from Paris was not wired. After about 2 months, I was down to my last $50. And I went into crisis mode. I knew I could survive for another week in the ashram. By the way, the cost of living within the ashram is about, well, back then it was about $3 per day. You would get 3 meals and you would have decent accommodation. Now, I went into panic mode, my mind did, and I went on my knees. I prayed to Lord Jesus, I prayed to Buddha, Allah, Rama, Krishna, and of course to Sri Satya Sai Baba. And I begged them not to turn me into a beggar on Indian soil as a European. That would go against my own standards and self-respect. After my prayer, I went into the Western canteen. Swami, as we call him, was so polite to install a canteen for Westerners. Reason being that the food was not and is not as spicy as what the Indians are used to. So as I'm sitting in this Western canteen and I'm swallowing my food with this castor oil face, I was approached by an Italian. His name, let's call him Max. I don't want to reveal his name. But I was approached by him and he asked me, "Sir, why you have such a castor oil face? What's wrong with you?" Well, I told him that I have a financial problem and that my survival on my own means was kind of in dire straits. And well, let me share, before he asked me that question, he actually told me about himself. And he mentioned to me that he was cleaning the toilets in the ashram as a kind of seva, which is a selfless service provided by Max for all the devotees, meaning men and women and children who came to the ashram in order to seek and find healing or inspiration, or would be there to charge their batteries in this great repair shop, as Swami called his ashram many times. Now, I was impressed that Max was actually diving into these toilet business, quote unquote, cleaning these rooms that were used for at least 5, if not 10,000 people a day. He impressed me with that. Now, when he asked me about my situation and I explained it to him, his reply was, "Wolfgang, you need to get out of your mind. Come with me, we go jogging." Now, this was a crazy idea. It was hot summer, maybe 45 degrees Celsius. But the idea was so crazy that I thought maybe it will help me to ease my mind and stay calm. So I joined him. We went to the Chitravati River outside the ashram. We took off our shirts and put them next to a freshwater tank that Sai Baba had recently erected for the village. Mind you, he built many water projects in India. The biggest of them is the one that is now providing Chennai with fresh, free drinking water. We're talking about a city the size of New York, maybe 7 or 8 million people living there. Anyway, we are now running across the riverbed. And of course, the sun would get under our skin. And after about 20 minutes, I saw a rice field, and more so, a water pipeline nurturing the rice field. So we took a shower, and our pants got wet. with these pans wet, we jogged back to the fresh water tank. And 4 gentlemen already were expecting us, waiting patiently. 2 volunteers from the ashram, we call them sevadals, and 2 police officers. Now they saw our t-shirts lying on the ground next to the water tank, and of course they saw our wet pants, and they were under the impression that we took a bath in the fresh water tank, and that was a crime. Now, I defended myself and my friend, said, "Gentlemen, by all means, but we are innocent. Let me show you the rice field. Let me show you the water pipeline. This is where we took a bath." Nothing I said made any difference. These gentlemen picked up the walkie-talkie and they called the head of security, which was an old gentleman, a real general AD from the Indian Army, more feared than Sri Satya Sai Baba himself. God bless his soul. He came to the site, and for some reason he was not in a good mood. Whenever I opened my mouth and tried to politely explain to him what really happened, I was shut down. And like criminals, we were escorted through the village, topless, I dare say, to the police station. And we became the sensation of Puttaparthi that day. It was very humiliating. Now, while sitting in this police station, I was contemplating, my mind was contemplating, maybe I have been following the wrong guru after all for 15 years back then. Because a real guru upholding truth and righteousness would step in, at least now, in front of his own home, so to speak, and save his devotees who were wrongfully accused by a brother in spirit. The general, after all, was or is also a Sai devotee. So this was the mind game happening within me. But there was another layer deeper down in my heart, in my soul. And that inner voice said, "Wolfgang, whatever happens, let it happen. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the unfoldment." I must say it was difficult to embrace that message from my heart, but I did. I told the general we're innocent. And the general lost his patience. He ordered 2 police officers to escort me into the ashram. I had 10 minutes to wrap my belongings, and then I was once again, like a criminal, escorted out of the ashram alongside the mandir where Sri Satya Sai Baba was residing, towards the ashram gates. I was hoping that at least in that moment Baba would come onto the balcony and stop this entire drama, but he didn't. The police officers whispered in my ears, "Wolfgang, we are very proud of you." I said, "Why?" "Well, we needed to see how somebody politely but firmly would confront the general. It was a good lesson for us." obviously it had its price. By the way, the Italian Max was not punished at all. He could remain in the ashram. So here I was now, down to $25. I felt like a truck just hit me. I couldn't think anymore. I couldn't meditate anymore, not to speak of prayer. And I was just in a space of non-existence, maybe. One thing I knew, I couldn't make a trip with $25 from Puttaparthi to Mumbai, Bombay. That is too long a distance for that little money in my pocket. I had a return ticket from Mumbai to Paris, but how to get there without becoming a beggar? And what would I do once I enter the flight? How would I get into the agency with so little cash? Lo and behold, as I was contemplating my options, or the lack of options, a taxi stopped right in front of me, and a gentleman left the taxi whom I met a month before in Hamburg, Germany, in a meditation center of Sri Satya Sai Baba. Back then it was in the Harmonia Bad, Munzburg, Hamburg. His name is Volker Stüber. We recognized each other. And Volker's asking me, Wolfgang, why are you staying here in front of these gates? Why don't you go inside? So I tell him my crazy story. And he opens his purse and gives me 50 Deutschmark. Back then we still had Deutschmark. And he says, here, this will get you to Mumbai. To make a long story short, 3 days later, I arrive in Paris. And I'm walking up the stairs to my agency PH1, and my ego just wants to blow this office into pieces. My ego was accusing my bookers and the accountants for sitting on my money. After all, if they would have sent this money that I earned through model gigs, if they would have sent it in time, I would not have faced such a dire situation in India. When I enter this office, my booker, Paula, jumps from her chair in utter surprise. Wolfgang, that you are here now is a miracle. I know, we owe you money, but put this aside for now. Here is 30 francs. Jump into the next taxi and drive to this address. Don't ask, just go, it's urgent. Now I am on autopilot. I follow her command. The taxi drops me at a bungalow, and it belonged to a film director. When I enter the lobby of his office, this director looks at my face and he tells his assistant, call Paula from PH1 right away. I want him. I had no clue what it meant, but I found myself 3 days later, business class, Air France, via Cape Town, South Africa. And I was the lead character for a worldwide campaign for the car company Peugeot. 607 was the new limousine that was brought onto the market. The total fee was buyouts, etc., usage fees, was $100,000. Now the government of France took 33%, the agency took 33% provision. That left me with about 34%. Nonetheless, it was some decent money that I could cash in, and I flew back to Puttaparthi about a week later. By the way, I was staying in a very exclusive hotel, the Mount Nelson Hotel, and I was the star on the set. A royal treatment, so to speak. But a week later, I flew back to India. I wanted to see my guru and thank him personally. And nobody stopped me from entering Puttaparthi, although I had a total ban to ever come back to Puttaparthi from the general. And I didn't see Baba first when I entered the mandir. I saw the general doing his job. So I walked right in his face. It was a big smile on my face, and I said, "Sir, I want to thank you for throwing me out." I told him my story. He was utterly moved. And he said, "Wolfgang, I believe you now, that you're innocent. But mind you, your Italian friend, remember Max, the guy who cleaned the toilets, well, there was a reason why he did it. Because he got caught in the fresh water tank swimming the day before my incident with him at the same spot." The morale of this true life experience is a crisis never seems what it is. In other words, there is a lesson to be learned for each and every one of us. And God will never forsake us when we go into spiritual autopilot, when we allow the divine voice. And I don't care who or what you pray to. Name and form is secondary, as long as you choose one name and one form and stick to it through thick and thin, through every crisis. That name and that form will pull you through, and the Lord of Death, Lord Yama, will not approach your doorstep, will not enter your body cells for as long as you have a job to fulfill, for as long as I have a mission to complete. And I believe humanity still has a mission to complete. Swami often says, follow the master, face the devil, fight to the end, and finish the game. He also encourages us to live by the rules of Dharma, righteousness, by the rules of Satya, truth, by the rules of non-violence, Ahimsa, by the rules of Shanti, peace, and by the rules of Prema, love. We need to face demonic forces that are currently very interested and very eager to establish control over our lives. Civil liberties are at stake. Our health through immature or total unnecessary vaccine campaigns is at stake. We must be fearless in confronting these demonic forces, whoever they are. We must go into fierce, nonviolent debate. We must allow for all viewpoints of experts to be heard and not allow mainstream media to select whom we shall listen to, as long as they have strong credentials. These individuals, especially when they don't go with the protocol of the mainstream media, need to be heard and listened to. And I just mentioned one name, Dr. Shiva, with his systems biology, systems engineering approach. He has credentials, and he is offering mankind solutions that we must not ignore. I urged each and every one of you to take this challenge, this crisis, by the horns. I urge each and one of you to embrace your inner divine essence, your divine voice. Fight the good game, not just for yourself, for your children. We are in this together, and we will not just survive, but thrive together with human values. It takes courage these days to uphold these, It takes tremendous courage these days to uphold these values, especially in times of adversity and peril. But from my own experience, and I shared just one crisis, I had many. I survived them all due to God's grace. And so will you. I love you. Namaste.